very exciting. We have this trio down here in this room. They're all looking extraordinarily dapper. And I might introduce to you at this point in time Mr. Woody Pines. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, it's been a couple years since you were in, right?
Yeah, I was trying to remember when the last time was. I think it was about 2 years ago.
But today you make a reappearance with a rather momentous afternoon because you are right on the verge of releasing a brand new album, self-titled, Woody Pines. Well received by our audience, I can assure you of that. So congratulations.
Thank you, yeah. And it's great timing for our show in the area, so and that just worked out randomly, so you never know.
Random? Yes.
The stars have conspired.
They have. Everything is aligned. You want to introduce your partners in crime this afternoon?
Sure. Over on the electric guitar is Brad Tucker picking away.
Hey there, everybody.
Sounded great, man. Sounded
Thank
great.
you. Appreciate that.
And on the upright bass is Chattanooga's own Skip Frantz Jr.
Yes, indeed. Bringing that low end here. Woody's got a show tonight again at Jack of the Wood in downtown Asheville, celebrating the release of the self-titled brand new album. And this is, I guess this is the first off on having label support, right?
Yeah, I think it was late in last year. We were talking to a label in Nashville, and we were kind of going back and forth. Started out just them putting out copies, a manufacturing deal, and we've talked and kind of had the same vision with the record. Now it's a full record deal, so we're excited. We
should shout out to them because no doubt they're listening. Muddy Roots Music.
That's right, Muddy Roots Music.
Over there in Music City.
Mr. Jason Gallas, the one-man army.
There we go.
So I heard he's split like an amoeba. Now he's two.
Ever since you boys came into the stable, that's
a little more work on his hands.
So was that a conspired thing? I mean, did you feel like you needed the support for an album release? You've had a string of albums out.
Yeah, so. I mean, I've started when I was first making CDs. We were spray painting them off the back of the car, spray painting stencils before shows, and I loved doing it all. I loved every kind of step I've taken, but I did move to Nashville to try to be able to work a little bit harder at music, make it my full-time job, and it just happened to be running into the right person at the right time. If it was Sony or something, we'd all be scared.
So how long, you were at one time an Asheville resident?
Yeah, I lived here probably about 4 years total.
Okay. Yeah, so when did you make the jump over to Music City?
When was it? I think it was 3 years ago. I decided, I was driving back and forth, and I had a little Geo Metro, and I decided I could actually save money by renting an apartment in Nashville, so I ended up just staying.
So we should. The album sounds great. So you really need to credit the folks at Sputnik Studios. Your producers did a great job.
Yeah, it was a real honor to work with. When we first started working there, they were like, "Oh, Grammy winning this, Grammy winning that," and we kind of weren't sure what that meant. And it was an amazing experience. I think you guys would agree. Went really quick. We could really tune into the exact sounds we want. They didn't fill it up with a whole bunch of toys and whatever studios do. Some studios can kind of kill the live sound, but
right.
Mitch Dane has some amazing equipment over there, and he's got quite an ear. And any time that we sort of had a hard time finding a direction, he just came right in. Anytime we needed help finding a direction, he was right on it, and just well, maybe if you guys tried this, he make very light suggestions that worked perfectly.
Yeah. If memory serves, Mitch has done a lot of work with Jack White and J.D. McPherson.
Jack White, J.D. Beck recorded at the studio. Who else? C6 Steve, who's real big out in the UK, blues guy.
He's got a new release out. Sounds great as well.
Oh, really? I'll have to listen to that.
Yeah. So, what was there? Is their deal more of an analog angle, or are they whatever you want to do?
Sort of. They did have an old '70s Neve board, which has a sort of an analog feel to it.
Yeah.
There's definitely more analog sound. Almost built for vinyl. We put out these little postcards, and it's on a piece of cardboard, and it sounds really good, So I can't wait to hear what the real record will sound like.
Was that something that you were concerned coming into the studio about? I mean, you have a distinctive vintage sound, so recording it in a full digital mode, would that Was that of a concern?
Oh, definitely. I think, and another thing, we wanted to record live without click tracks, so you may notice that the songs really ramp up as they do in the live show, and I think that was something we kind of nailed. Yeah, sitting in front of that old Neve, it was like sitting in front of the Starship Enterprise or something with all the lights. And we were pushing for that analog sound for sure. I think the converters were these 70s converters that, geez, I don't even know how to talk about it really, because it's not my job.
The needles bounce the right way. So let's get into the writing and such. You guys did some rearranging on some numbers, and then there's a few straight up covers, I guess, like this one, right? How did you make those choices coming in?
The album was a mix of songs that we do live and a bunch of original, some songs that we hadn't even played yet, but we just wanted to get them out. So the recording was broke up into two kind of sections, and it was real fun to record a few songs and then go out, and then we did a week-long tour and played the arrangements that we came up with in the studio and kind of road test them, and then go back to the studio and listen to them again. And
how many of the arrangements got thrown out at that point?
countless arrangements.
Well, it was really cool
did get thrown
because
out?
we got to, once we were in the studio, we got to really, we came in there with, the basic idea how we were going to do it, and we came up with some really cool arrangements, like even adding like some drums and stuff here and there, but still we kept the really stripped down sound, and that was something that was cool about Mitch, is he didn't insist on making it overproduced, with like a 30-piece gospel choir in the background.
Right. Did were all the songs fully fleshed out in terms of writing at that point? Did you already have that knocked out?
They were all written. As far as the words, we did arrange. The Train Rolls By had some arrangements in the studio where we kind of sat down and we were like, well, I could make this work better. So we kind of went into the console and why don't you try this chord? Why don't we try that chord?
Right.
And then it came out this really cool other being that we didn't know we were birthing there.
It felt completely natural. That was the beauty about it.
That's the perfect studio experience, then.
It didn't feel like we were trying to force any tunes.
Yeah.
And also the vibe was there where we could come up with good stuff right on the spot.
Yeah. So, what is your writing process like? Do you have any kind of standard thing that you go through when you're trying to create new material, or is it just happenstance?
Yeah, nothing standard. Sometimes they come out all at once, and sometimes you've got this chorus you've been hammering away, and you're just looking for a word or a stanza to fill in, and it fits in perfect. And you're like, yeah, remember that song? And I don't know. There's hundreds of different kinds of songs. I always believe there's hundreds of ways to write them. Some people are like, I think Hank Williams said he holds the pen and God moves it.
Perfect.
Which sometimes it feels like that. Sometimes they just come out in 5 minutes, and those are the simplest, nicest songs. And then sometimes you can really build them into a construct that you had no idea that you were working on.
Yeah. Do you keep a journal?
No, I have scraps of paper everywhere though.
Big folder full of scraps. Yeah. Do you have favorite writers that you turn to for inspiration?
Yeah, I definitely do. A lot of them are poets, and I love like Oscar Wilde and some of the old school poets. Of course, I love all the Tom Waits and Bob Dylan and Hank Williams and
yeah. I for whatever reason, I kind of fashioned that you might have a hand in Southern literature.
Yeah, I you know what? I should study some more. I always think Hank Williams is Southern literature. Yeah, it was real interesting. I learned, I think, from one of the guys in the Felice Brothers. You probably remember those guys. They found out that Hank Williams got a lot of his source material from local comic strips that were in the local papers, and you can find whole quotes of Hank Williams songs that way.
The best philosophy is always in the funny papers, anyway.
Yeah,
right?
Keep reading the funnies.
I wonder, are you a crate digger? Do you go access older material in record stores?
Oh yeah. That's in fact, we joke when we're on the road. We've been on the road a lot that we loiter 23 hours out of the day and we play one, and that's one of our activities is thrift store hunting, record store shopping, and. Yeah.
Do you? Here's the dirty secret. Of course, is there's nothing new in music. So, have you ever been tempted or better to take a line from a song and then riff off of that?
Yeah, well, especially
And
folk
you can
music.
lie if you want to. I mean, it's
Yeah, I mean, I always believe I'm a at the heart folk musician. So all the songs that are in the public domain, I was always fascinated. How do we own those songs? You know, and they're written by hundreds of different people, and nobody. Especially when you're trying to figure out how to copyright stuff, you realize there's nothing new, and it's impossible to copyright it. And then you find out there's people who have copyrighted it for disingenuous reasons and like publicity, and stealing material. And of course, I'm not above stealing. I think there's some quote about great artists steal.
You're too lazy to steal. You're too lazy to play.
Yeah, there you go. But we want to give credit, you know, whenever we can to everybody that we've from the
touch on,
Lexington.
sure,
Yeah,
sure. I think a lot of people are probably ignorant of just how many miles you've covered since your upbringing up in New Hampshire. But it's been a many coast arrangement.
yeah.
I'd love for you to kind of spill the story out because you ended up out in Eugene,
Yeah.
Oregon.
When I graduated high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and this could be a tip for any fathers out there. My dad bought me an Ameripass, which is a ride you can ride endlessly on the Greyhound bus for 3 weeks, or no, for 1 week, and I got 3 of them. So I immediately jumped on the bus and went out to New Mexico and then California, and ended up living in Olympia, Washington, and Eugene. Yeah, finally.
And then I guess it was you guys playing the country fair. And,
But busking on the Oregon Country Fair, I practiced all these instruments, and I found out the best thing for busking was, in fact, a cheese grater. Made the most money out on the street, and moved to. We were, you know what like the Northwest winters are. It's raining and raining. A street musician told us that we should go down to New Orleans, and you could play there all winter long. So, ended up moving down there, looking up a washboard player named Ragtime Annie, and she showed us a bunch of songs and how to work the streets, basically, how to make a little living.
She used to be associated with Baby Gramps out on the West Coast, right?
Baby Gramps' old girlfriend, believe it or not.
Yeah. So you end up down in the Crescent City, and that had to be a pretty eye-opening experience to settle into.
Yeah,
into
for a
that
New
environment.
Hampshire boy down in the Big Easy, it was great. I mean, we went and I saw Dixieland bands, the Jazz Vipers and Palmetto Bug Stompers, and all these bands along Frenchman Street, and learned the ways of how you had to wake up early to get the slot, and kind of, it gave us a sense of working. Yeah, this was a job, you know.
Right. Street corners, I would think, would be exceedingly territorial down there. I mean, it's a pretty cutthroat business.
It is. We never had any trouble on our corner, but the other corner, St. Anne's and Royal, there was a stabbing while we were there from someone who woke up and took the spot from someone who felt that it wasn't right, you know.
Right. So what was it that eventually caused the move from those pleasant environment down there in New Orleans to Asheville?
Well, in the end of May, it's not so pleasant. When you start,
steamy?
Yeah, you can start to fry an egg on the pavement. The band broke up. We all went our separate ways, and I actually ran into a bunch of musicians who worked the season in New Orleans and spent the summers in Asheville.
Right.
And then I wasn't even playing music at all when I first moved to Asheville. I was farming, raising chickens and stuff up Big Sand Gap or somewhere up there, I think. And
okay, what are the worst 3 worst jobs you've had since you landed on the West Coast?
Be careful now.
Yeah.
oh man,
Just saying.
Musician, no.
anybody ever work like a late night call sales job or whatever, where you have to call?
Yes.
I had nightmares from the people's voices, you know. And the good people were the people who hung up on you. The sad ones were the ones that actually
They
bought what
wanted
you
to
were
talk,
selling.
right?
Yeah.
They wanted to talk. So Woody finds getting into yet another long year of touring. You guys work the road exceedingly hard in the course of a year. How many dates are you averaging these days?
I think we added up about 200 dates last year, and which is not good for us. You know, we're starting to slow down a little bit and take it easy. So maybe 240 dates. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd
Might be
say
something.
about that, yeah.
You just came off a rather extensive tour in the UK, right?
Yeah, we did. What was it? 28 shows in 25 days. We played a bunch of daytime gigs. We played for some high schools, some Irish high schools, and I think we were the first Americans that some kids had met. Really inspiring. Really great to meet everybody.
Did you book that tour yourself, or did somebody?
No,
help
we
you
have
arrange that?
we have an agent that
Yeah,
helps us fill in.
How did you find the audiences over there?
Oh, fantastic. I mean, they would listen to every single word we had to say. I think we got encores every night. Very, very polite folks, and then they take us out drinking. It was hard to get rid of them sometimes.
They've always struck me in my time over there, very, very proper folks as an audience. But then,
The minute you leave the venue,
but then, then the chains come off. And
it got to the point where, usually in the States when somebody says, "Oh, they'll offer up your house," come on, stay over the place. Like, oh, great, that's nice. We don't have to book a hotel. And over there, it was more like, oh boy, we got to go to their house,
no.
and they're gonna
That's right.
tear
We'll
into
never
us
get
and
to the
see
next
the
stop.
sunrise.
Yeah. So, what do you think what is the explanation? So many Americana artists are ending up in Northern Europe and the UK and finding great success. Is there anything you can kind of pin it on?
They like good music.
Yeah, that's the quick and succinct answer. Yeah.
They dig the jumping rhythms that come from American music.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. It's especially when it comes to blues, swing jazz. That we have a history in America where we kind of pride ourselves on being able to make people tap their foot with our music.
Right. Right. So, plans afoot to go back over?
Yeah, we've already booked actually another month next March. They were real eager to get us back.
Yeah. Were they? They were not privy to the new material.
We actually
time, right?
previed it over there.
Oh,
We
did
had
you?
a suitcase full of the new record, so we had a good time hand delivering it to DJs like Bob Harris.
Yeah.
We got to give it right
Whispering
to him.
Bob, I think? Yeah.
Whispering Bob.
Right.
Yeah. And then when we got to Ireland, we met some of the DJs on RTE2 radio and actually through Twitter, and then just randomly ran into the guy at a pub in Cork. And I gave him a copy, and then real supportive.
Pubs.
Yeah,
It's,
go figure.
It's the oldest social media, right?
It was something that I thought was fascinating over there, going back to your last question about why American music's so popular over there. That group of the young Irish fellas that we played for at the high school, they were extremely quiet. We couldn't tell if they liked it or not because they were all very stone-faced. And it actually was the most nervous out of any gig there. It was the most nervous I was. And it was really fascinating because after we finished, they were really enthusiastic, and they were asking us questions, and they said, and I would ask them, who's your favorite musician? They say, oh, Bob Dylan, or, the band, or any sort of answers like old classic rock, and even new artists that are great, and they really, really enjoyed it thoroughly, whereas here you ask a group of high schoolers, and who knows what you're going to get for an answer.
Right, totally.
So I thought it was really fascinating how cultured they seem to be,
That is very interesting. Was there one particular gig that stood out amongst all those dates?
Worth Matravers.
Could be worth it. Yeah, this 300-year-old pub right on the water. Though it was small, but mighty.
Ah. Did it have a smuggling trap door in it? So many of those pubs have, if they were on the river, they'd have an angle that they could move the liquor in and out.
Did I say river? I meant English Channel. I meant the
English Channel. Slightly larger.
I'm sure they had all kinds of trap.
That's cool.
hidden little
You guys
nooks.
preference between playing the high school auditorium, the pub, as opposed to playing a festival?
I thought about that. I think if we had to do one for very long, it would get old. But that's the great part about this job is you never know. Every gig's different. We'll play in a club where people are dancing, and then play a theater in a beautiful room with a golden chandelier or whatever, and then a high school with a bunch of Catholic high school kids in suits.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. It's Road Warrior Woody Pines and the band here live in Studio B. That's Skip Franz on the bass and Brad Tucker on the guitar. Gentlemen, a real pleasure. Thanks so much for stopping in.
Hey, thanks for having us.
The door is always open. Swing on back by.
Yeah, anytime. We'll come back.
Nice. We got a show tonight. Once again, Jack of the Wood in Asheville, kicking off about 9 o'clock with, the Daydream Creatures opening the show. Tomorrow, it's the Bear Waters Brewery in Waynesville. Live Studio B sessions on WNCW are made possible by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. Thanks to Dennis Jones back there in the back for orchestrating this whole thing. Yes, indeed. And now we go to a little tune from the Derek Trucks Band.